So my name is Bruno. I'm from Futurize. You pronounced it correctly. It's always a challenge, right? And I'm bringing a topic called what serverless AI machine learning APIs can tell us about fake and credible news. Now, quick introduction to Futurize. So Futurize is a software engineering and innovation consultancy company, headquartered in Finland almost 20 years ago, but we have been growing quite a lot, and we have a strong presence within Europe, including here in Stockholm. We are at the moment close to actually 600 people within 8 offices. And I'm bringing this up because this story actually started with a customer project at Futurize. So we work not just from the software or technology perspective, but also from service design, business advisory. And we're running an innovation lab with one of our customers. And there was one idea that was a bit crazy enough that we were very unsure. So we had like service designers, business advisors, tech people, and we were coming up with an idea, and we were like, there was parts of it that we're very unsure, like, is this even technically feasible? And this story starts like that. Starts because of something that, can we actually implement this? So the project required about chatbots and sentiment analysis. And we knew that there was things in public cloud. We have also data scientists, and then we know that we didn't know what type of effort it will require, but we knew that it probably would be possible, but we wanted to dig a bit deeper. So we didn't have much constraints, even though the company was using AWS, I believe. Yes, AWS. But we, as Futurize, we are actually quite neutral, and we actually work with AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. And we didn't have any restrictions. We wanted to know what is feasible, what is not feasible. Now, so when I started to look at the problem and like what is out there, what is in the current public cloud vendors, there are a gazillion services. If you have been using any of them, you know that sometimes it's easy to get lost in the amount of services that you have in public cloud. So in the AI and analytics is no different. There's also a lot of them. So I divided them in 3 different subsets. So you have the data engineering type of services, things that allows you to ingest data, store data, do the ETL on top of data, and do also visualizations on top of data. Then you have the really AI and machine learning platforms, things like SageMaker, for instance, in AWS, things that allow you to build, to train, and deploy your models. And then there's a whole different category, which is this AI and machine learning APIs. I knew that they existed. I was very excited when they were first launched. I was very disappointed when I tried it the first time. Like, oh, okay, it's not that good. So I knew that there was some evolution in that space. And this is where I wanted to focus, on these pre-trained machine learning models that are there available via an API. Now, traditionally, when you think about data engineering and AI in the 3 public clouds, you think around this type of services. You think, when you are ingesting data, you think about Google Cloud PubSub or Kinesis in AWS. You think about the ETL, how can you actually extract data, transform the data, and basically clean up the data. You think about how you store it. You think about how you actually, if you have the need to create a data warehouse. You traditionally don't think about, when you think about these services, you don't think about these APIs. They are there, but they are often not mentioned enough. So I started exploring what was there, and I realized that it's a rabbit hole. I got super carried away. So you actually have, in all of them, you have a gazillion of things to explore. You have things, like for the chatbot, which was the primary thing that I was looking for. All of them were giving me that we have chatbot technology. We have Amazon Lex, we have Google Cloud Dialogflow, Azure Bot Service, and then there's a lot more. You have APIs for text-to-speech, speech-to-text, image recognition, sentiment analysis, to do recommendations, and Google even has this cloud genomics, which I have no idea who uses, but I'm going to ask Brett about it. I want to know who uses this, who stores and processes genomes in Google Cloud. I want to know. But there's really interesting stuff that is very far-fetched, some of them. But one thing is that, yeah, like on paper, this all looks good, right? They all look fantastic. They do wonders. And I wanted to go deeper, like, do actually do wonders. So I was thinking, like, well, I need some kind of I need a way that I can assess the value of this. How is this actually in practice? So after 1 week, seeing all of this information and getting all of this, from the 3 public clouds, all of this kind of brochures that, yes, we do this, we do that, we have this, we have that. I was really like, yeah, I need to test this. I need to find a way to test it. And then it was Friday evening, and I went home and I was reading the newspaper online, and there was President Donald Trump saying something fake news. And I was like, huh, yeah, I mean, it's not news that he's saying that, but I was thinking like, well, could I actually, try this APIs with media websites and see what they say? So I was thinking like, there's a lot of different news media websites, credible or fake. Some of them are like, and this is when I started to think like, is it that hard to spot actually fake news? The really concept of fake news, meaning that from a news media house that's not accredited press, is it that hard to spot it? Because, come on, look at it. I guess you already realize that the ones in below are fake news, right? I mean, there's one with Darth Vader, for God's sakes. How hard it is to spot if it is fake news? So that was my assumption, like, it cannot be that hard. Maybe this APIs can help me. That's an interesting stuff. So I got really carried away besides the customer project, as you realize by this point. So I started like, I'm going to do this by my own because this sounds like actually quite fun. And, extracting metadata from a website is not hard. I mean, it's basic engineering. You grab a screenshot of a website. You can get the text output of that website. You can even get all the child images from that website. 3 different techniques give you a lot of data. And so that's how I started. Okay, this will be my basic data. I'm going to grab this from each website. I will start with one. Let's call it like the Telegraph for that matter, and see what do I get from this. So first, I started with Google Cloud. The genome thing was really, really nice. Sorry, Brett, that was a really marketing stunt. I really love that. I was like, this looks very promising, this services in Google Cloud. I'm going to try this first. And, I started to enrich that data with the Google Cloud, especially the Vision API and also the one for sentiment analysis. So the one for sentiment analysis is called natural language, and it actually also classifies a bit the text. It's not just for sentiment analysis, it's like a subset of it. But that's exactly what I started to do. So for instance, I took, with the screenshot, throw that to the image recognition, the Vision API, and get things like what kind of labels are in this image, what kind of, is this safe? So there are all functionalities there that were giving me nice JSON outputs. Also in the natural language, like the sentiment analysis, it was giving me if it was positive, neutral, or negative. It looked quite interesting, actually. I was like, okay, yeah. What else? I mean, one of the things that was really interesting for me is that the easiness of use. Basically, I was able to, I have this in my laptop. No serverless functions, anything like that. I have this in my laptop. I extracted this in my laptop. And okay, I want to use just this APIs. I want to see what this gets. So that was my initial start. So with the client tools, very easy to, one line, and I immediately got this JSON with a lot of information. It is really like a lot of information. Like, I'm not expecting you to read that. Just to know that you get a lot of stuff and you get very lost in, okay, what actually is relevant here, because it goes to a lot of details. Now, of course, I wanted then to do the same thing with AWS, because that's actually what the customer was using. So with AWS, very similar experience in terms of easiness of use. For instance, I use the recognition to detect labels, what is in this image, and then I use the AWS Comprehend for the sentiment analysis. And I also got a lot of JSON, very interesting labels, like you get things like this, like from the image, like is a person, is a human. I detect also that there's clothing, hopefully news, media, is a poster, brochures. You get things that are relevant, or things that are associated with the image. And I was quite surprised with the easiness of use. Also with the comprehend, there was one small hiccup. And I'm so happy that there's so many AWS people here. Because I wasn't able to send the entire text of the website. I actually had to cut it a little bit because it couldn't take it. I got really nice this input text size exceeds limit. Other than that, it worked perfectly. I got the stuff. Now, I started to, I'm going to take a stab now at AWS. But don't feel bad because I didn't try this with all the others at this level. But I started to, when I was using this comprehend, one of the things that I noticed is that I was getting a lot of this sentiment neutral. So it was neither positive or negative. It was always almost neutral. And I was very fascinated, like, am I supposed to get something else than neutral? And so I started, instead of sending the entire text of the web page, I started with a simple phrase, or a simple word, actually, hello. And I thought I was being friendly by saying hello, but they say it's neutral. So that's the sentiment of that. And I was like, okay, I can do better. I'm going to trick you. Drugs are good. AWS agrees. You guys must party really hard. But then I'm like, okay, can I trick this a little bit more? Drugs and violence are good. Also positive. And I'm like, okay, can I go one step further? Drugs, crime, murder, terrorism, and violence are good. And then that is neutral. So, at that moment I knew that sentiment analysis is a tricky thing because if you have the word good on it, it must be good. So I think that one thing that you need to, this is not just saying that AWS comprehend is bad or anything like that. No, it's just saying that most likely Google Cloud or Azure has exactly the same problem. My point is that you need to take the results that you get from this with a grain of salt. The results that you get from these pre-trained models will never be as accurate or as good as if you train your own model. It's not also the, I don't think it's the purpose as well. The idea is that you can use this to gain really value very fast and without much effort, even without much data science expertise. Now, so getting those values from all of these APIs for one website was okay. Of course, then I wanted to scale this. I wanted to, okay, I'm able to get some interesting type of JSON from each of the APIs from these things. Can I, this is only for one website. Can I actually start mixing different websites? So I kind of make a small research about different URLs, about credible URLs, and also fake media URLs. And one challenge with the fake media URLs is that they actually don't live for that long. They get flagged very easily. So the websites, the URLs keep changing. So it was, even though there's a lot of research projects doing a lot of research about with lists about URLs and if they are fake or what type of fake, is there a satire or are they what type of fake news is this? They usually don't live for that long, and it was very hard to find actually from those lists some URLs that were actually more suitable. Now, I managed to find 10, and they all seemed weird enough, but written in English. And then I also found, well, I put 10 of the credible news media in, and my only requirement that they had to be in English. I could have used the translation API, but I didn't want to do it at that point. I wanted everything to be in English. So I looked at press from news media from UK, from US. I think that I also tried with one from Australia, but I don't think it's in this list at this point. But that was my requirement. And then my idea was that, okay, I'm gonna I have 20 URLs. Every day I'm gonna visit each one of them and I'm gonna collect a screenshot, I'm gonna collect this text output and the child images. And then with that information, then I will use these APIs and for each of those metadata and grab what can I do and then aggregate the results, and maybe there will be something interesting, something valuable on it, right? So we started with I started with the category. So what can I get from the text in AWS? So in AWS, the information is that on one side you have the fake URLs, and the other side the credible ones. So interesting bit. Both of them mention Trump. So I mean, the man must have really some beef with every news media, because even the fake and the credible ones mention him a lot. Now, other thing was that Brexit was very mentioned only on the credible ones, not on the fake ones. And this was collected, let me see, it was like the week before they exited the first time. Well, they were supposed, yeah. So it was like April, so it was the first deadline or something like that. So, you know, Brexit was in the news a lot. You left because you were living in UK, aren't you? Yeah. So this was like April, May. It was like the first week, the last week of the deadline. So, you know, Brexit was everywhere. So you're going to see a lot of screenshots with Brexit. So it was because of that. Now, one of the interesting things that in the fake ones, dates were mentioning a lot. Like, as you can see, like the proportion of times that dates are mentioned is huge. In the credible media, that didn't happen at all. Like, very little amount of dates being mentioned. In the fake ones, all the time. As you can see from the pie chart, there's a lot of them being mentioned, different dates. That was interesting, but not really that revealing. Then what happened is that in Google Cloud, of course, the JSONs that you get from one or the other are not the same, so you cannot compare one to one like that. But you can do the text analysis, and you can get that. One interesting bit is that on the Google Cloud, the credible ones, they correctly identify the type of text as either news or news politics. While the fake ones, there was a small subset that identified as sensitive subjects. So that actually didn't happen with the credible ones, which was very interesting. I think that then we started to get somewhere. It's still not, you know, you don't get the black or white answer, of course, but you get some hints of something that might be interesting to distinguish them. And then when you do the sentiment analysis, most of it was neutral. As you can saw with the example in AWS, I was expecting most of them to be neutral. Hell, when it's credible news, I expect them to be neutral. The sentiment associated with it should be a bit neutral. On the fake ones, however, there was a small percentage of them that were negative, which didn't happen with the credible ones. So there was a difference there. Now, with the Google Cloud, the results are a bit different in the sense that the type of values that you get are different, but the gist is actually quite the same. You get on the fake ones, you get some of them are a bit negative, but on the credible ones, everything is mostly neutral. And one major difference here is that with Google Cloud, you get not just the value, if it's positive, neutral, or negative, you get the strength associated with that sentiment. That's why you have a bit of different values compared with this black or white answer. But I was actually very surprised here that that conclusion was the same for both of them. That on the fake ones we will get some things that are a bit negative sentiment, while on the credible ones mostly neutral. So I knew I was on the right track. I was getting somewhere here. Then the image recognition, which actually is my favorite because I'm a visual person as well, and I really like what you get. One of the interesting bits that you get in AWS image recognition, which you don't get in the other ones, is the celebrity recognition, which is a super fun API. And one interesting bit is that on the credible screenshots, also the credible news screenshots, you get a lot of politicians. If you look at it, most of it, politicians, only one actress. Now, then on the fake ones, it's the opposite. Mostly actors or actresses, and only one politician, which is the president of China. Like, it was very, and I was very like, oh, okay, that's weird. Like, I was not expecting that. Then also you have this moderation labels, like if the content of the image is safe. And in the credible ones, you didn't, like, nothing was found, meaning that nothing was unsafe, which I expected. But then in the fake ones, you did get some. I did got some violence or violent or gore type of content. Maybe it's the Darth Vader, I don't know. But it was very interesting because you didn't got that from the other ones. Then in Google Cloud, similar example, meaning that using the same type of API, which is the image recognition API, you do get a bit of a mix. You get about if the image is not just the image is unsafe, is more like what are the safe search annotations that you will get from it, meaning what type of potentially unsafe content this is. You get a bit more context. And there was also on the top line, on the first line you get the credible ones, and then on the bottom one you get the fake ones. And on the credible ones, the only thing that was a bit weird is that you got this in the, if it's a racy content, like you get likely or possible. Other than that, like if the content is adult or medical or spoof or violence, sorry, if it's violence, then it's very unlikely. The spoof, there was some likelihood of that in some of them. That was a bit surprising to me. Then on the fake content, a lot, like very likely that this is racy, very likely that this is about medical, or that this is a spoof, or this is violent. So it was actually flagging almost all of them, it was flagging something about that. So that was super surprising to me. So in conclusion, first, this was super fun to do. that's my first conclusion. I went way above what I was supposed to do for the customer. I do it on my free time. But the interesting bit is that the lessons I got from this is that this is super easy to use. You can really quickly build up something that creates value, or at least it generates value. One simple API or one simple API call can give you a lot of content. It is not enough for you to use something like this to classify black or white. Is this fake? Is this credible? I wouldn't approach the problem like that. It was never my intention in the first place. And if you think like, Facebook, for instance, has huge teams just looking at this type of problem, right? So I wasn't expecting with the simple API calls to solve the problem. I don't think I solved it. But my point is that I got really strong indications that could allow me to use this to build some logic to, at least flag something that might be inappropriate or might not be credible. And with that, thank you. Well, yeah.
Any questions?
He's running away. You didn't like the AWS thing. With the URLs that I used? Not my personal bias, because the URLs came from research institutes that are researching what URLs are fake. The credible ones were only from media houses that were accredited press.
Or medical, because people
I'm not sure if I'm following your question, but I mean, there was nothing, like, I just had the URL. Nothing was suggesting me that this was, violent or anything. It was a simple URL, like completely automated way, capture a screenshot, visit the web page, grab the screenshot. I didn't know in advance what the URL was going to bring. Also, because I was visiting every day, it was always, potential to change. So I hope, at least I wasn't trying to make any biased. I hope not. That's why you saw my approach, but happy to discuss with you afterwards if you, yeah. protect against? I didn't went to that level, so like, you know, I have the URL, to me was a black box. I didn't care where they were hosted, to be honest. They could even be in someone's basement for that matter. I wasn't looking at that type of data. Yeah. But like what I was seeing before I started running it like in scale, what I was seeing is that I visit a couple of them, and for instance, they might work in one day, and then after 2 days they disappeared, and I was like, okay, I cannot trust this thing to work, you know, together for the content for like a week, because some of them were getting down very, very fast. One also interesting bit, I don't think I mentioned that, is that I noticed, at least with some of them, that the same exact content was appearing, like the website was taken down, and then the same exact content was appearing in a different URL, and yeah. That was one way that they had maybe to circumvent the URLs getting blacklisted.
Why did you choose Fox as a
Good question. As I mentioned, my only criteria is that they are accredited press by their own countries. That's the political correct answer. Yeah, no bias there. And by AWS, yes. Like,
So they could introduce
for sure, for sure. For sure they could, and I also even check also Microsoft Azure. I just didn't have enough time and content to put it here. But of course they can introduce bias. I don't think they did, to be honest, because as I compare one and the other, you saw that most of the things were leaning in the same direction. Would be extremely surprised if they didn't. I was hoping to catch one of those, but I didn't. Yeah. All right. Oh yeah, good that you remember that. So in the end of today, we put together a fireside chat panel discussion, which will be here. Yes. Yeah. So hope that you stay a little bit more. There's foods and drinks. So this was a last-minute addition to the agenda. All right. Thank you so much.